Hi, I'm Julian Jetson, and I am the producer of the Gay Geeks and Where to Find Them panel at conventions. And I'm also the host of QCon the podcast, a podcast promoting the event QCon in West Hollywood, happening this year on May 3rd, 2025. And you can find that on any podcast streaming platform. And you can also find me at Blue Sky as Julian Jetson. And I'm also on Instagram at Julian_Jetson. And you can find all of the links to the podcast and everything through my link tree on my Instagram as well.
I feel that 100%. Well, now when we talk, here's the interesting thing, though, I got to say, because we were talking about WonderCon before we started recording, and you were hosting the Gay Geek panel there, which was a fantastic panel, by the way.
Thank you.
Nicole Maines was on the panel. But so I have to ask, is she as wonderful in real life as she seems to be? Because otherwise, I'm just blown away.
100%. Like what you saw of her on the panel is literally how she and I talk to each other. Like that's her being super real. And you can hear it in the podcast too. Like she's a ball of like love and energy, and I just love being around her energy. Like when we met, I was not trying to be like, oh, let me make this celebrity my friend. It was nothing like that. We were at San Diego Comic-Con and she was on my panel back then. And we had met momentarily at WonderCon the year before. And the next day after the panel, um, they like triple booked us. It was her, Josh Trujillo, and myself at the Prism Comics booth. And I was supposed to be there promoting the podcast, and Josh and Nicole were there for signings. And usually it's just two people, but they accidentally triple booked us. And I was gonna be like, you know what, let me step back and let them have their moment. And I did. I let them like sit at the table and do their signings. But I was like, but this is the time I had allocated for promoting the podcast at the booth. So let me go ahead and just like hang around and hang back and talk to people and stuff like that and promote the podcast. And after that, Nicole and I, Josh had to go to a panel, and Nicole and I ended up walking around like just some of the vendors at San Diego Comic Con. And it kind of dawned on me for a second. I went, oh, does this look like I'm trying to be like the celebrity follower? Like I'm just hanging out with her because she's that. And I go, that's not my tea. Let me like very graciously like remove myself. And I told her, I said, hey, I was like, it was so great hanging out with you, but I'm actually getting kind of hungry. So I'm gonna go grab something to eat if you want to keep shopping. And she was like, are we allowed to curse on here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just I always have to check. I never know. She was like, fuck that, let's go get food. and we spent probably God, most of the day together, just walking around the vendors, shopping. We went by the DC booth. She got me up to the top of the DC booth, which was I felt very bougie. It was very cool. And then it's just been a friendship since then on out. Like we hit the ground running, and I'm super, super excited to be her friend. She's such a cool person.
That is such a, I feel you 100% because that is like the weirdly awkwardly social position to be in.
Yeah.
Because I've been in that position, not like name dropping or anything, but we've been like DMing somebody who's like a celebrity, and you don't want to be like too conversational, because
Yeah.
you don't want to make it seem like you're just like, hey, we just met, we're gonna be best friends because you're going to like elevate me or some shit, you know. But on the flip side, I don't know, it's like really fucked up because I've seen the other side of that. Like I'm not gonna name names, but I know somebody like on Instagram who it's like they will go to a con and meet a celebrity and then go on and on their Instagram stories about how they're close friends and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, you paid the $60 and met them for 30 seconds. What are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Oh, it's cringe. It's very
Yeah.
cringe.
Yeah.
I think that like my mentality about it is, I grew up in Palm Springs, and lots of celebrities end up visiting or living there. I remember the first time I saw Ben Stein walking at the outdoor mall in Ranch Mirage, I like stopped and like turned my head thinking, I swear that was Ben Stein. And then I saw as he was walking, everybody else stopping and looking. I go, okay, that's Ben Stein. That's the only person that would get that kind of reaction. And one of my friends was like, "You should go up and say hi to him." And I go, "What am I gonna say? Am I just gonna fumble over my words and say Bueller, Bueller?" Like I can't. I cannot do that. But it was actually when I met the artist Shag for the first time. God, that was back in 2008, 2009. And I fully fanboyed. Like I had like multiple things to do that night, different parties, and I was making an appearance at all three of them. I had to call everybody up because I found out the day before that he had an art showing in Palm Springs. I was like, let me cancel all my appearances. I'm like, hey, I know it's your birthday. I might show up later, but I'm not going to be there. I have something I have to go do. And I fully fanboyed over him.
Hmm.
And mind you, this is like MySpace days. So I'd taken photos, made it all the way back home, and uploaded the photos to my MySpace. And then got a call from one of my girlfriends who was like, hey, let's go out downtown Palm Springs. Let's go to some of the bars. And I said, sure. She gets all the way to picking me up, and she lived like a couple cities away. And she goes, you aren't going to believe what I just did. I go, what? She goes, I forgot my license at home. I forgot my whole wallet at home. And I was
Oh.
like, oh. So how are we going to get into a bar? You know what? There was an art gallery that I was just at that had free alcohol. Let's go check that out. When I left that art gallery, it was packed of people. When we went back, and this maybe like an hour and a half later, maybe 2 hours, it was literally Shag, the bartender, the gallery owners, and maybe like three or four people. And I ended up having a conversation with him for an hour, and he introduced me to Glenn Barr, which I was like, oh my God, like what is going on right now? And we've been friends since. And I feel like since I ever had that fanboy moment with him, I kind of learned to take it back a notch when I'm around people that are celebrities, and especially because I'm around them. I was around them a lot in the desert. It just became, I don't know, you just treat them how you would want them, how they would want to be treated. You treat them like people, and that's how you get more genuine interactions or genuine interactions. Genuine. Making up words as I go.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the biggest thing that like, oh God, we forget is that like celebrities are people. And
Yeah.
I always keep in mind that like maybe they get tired of the fangirling to an extent. And yet if you have a celebrity who's obsessed with people fangirling over them, they're probably not the kind of person you want to meet anyway. You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It can be like that. At San Diego Comic Con, I was at where Chandler does his queer geek meetup at the Coin Op bar. The very first time I went, oh, what was his name? From Supernatural, Jared Padalecki. I
Oh,
think
okay.
he was there, and people were just going up to him for photos. And so he was being super gracious and getting photos with everybody, but then he ended up leaving like almost immediately after that. I was like, he didn't even finish his beer. He wanted to like, I mean, you can only be incognito so much at a big event like that. And I think
Hmm.
he was wanting like just a moment to like, let me relax and not be that guy. And then everybody
Right.
was wanting him to be that guy. And he was just like, awesome, I'll take all these photos. And then he dipped. He left.
Yeah. Gosh, and that's the hard part because I've had that happen where it's like you see a celebrity of some kind, you could very easily go up and ask for a picture, but you can just tell they look stressed and tired, and you're like, do I want to be that person? But on the other hand, when am I going to get another opportunity like this? You know, you try to be really respectful about it. I don't know if you're a sports fan at all. Sports
Baseball
ball,
and hockey.
okay.
Sports ball,
Sports ball.
yes.
That's what my
My
wife.
favorite sport. Goal.
Go teams, yay! That's what my wife says. But
It's
yeah,
amazing.
just to that note, like I grew up a sports fan. I'm a ginormous Michael Jordan fan. I remember watching this documentary with him, and it was like the height of his popularity. And he was in Utah for like 2 days, and basically he couldn't leave his hotel room because the lobby and all the streets were just full of people just waiting to get pictures, interviews, and it's like, yeah, you cry and complain like, oh, I'm making millions of dollars and I'm super famous, but on the other hand, you're also kind of like a prisoner of that. So yeah, you try really hard to be respectful. But going back to WonderCon, that's the crazy thing about WonderCon. Like the random people you bump into. Like being a comic book fan my whole life, and at one point in time I was walking through like the go out the front door out by where the fountain was, and like Todd McFarlane stepped in front of me and held the door for me.
Oh, I
And
love when moments like that happen.
you're like, was that just yeah, that was Todd McFarlane. Okay. Be
Yeah.
cool, be cool, be cool. You know what I mean?
And it's funny too with like my partner, he totally gets like this is my thing and he's so supportive and he's not really someone to be like, this is more your thing, go do your thing. He wants to like be involved with what I'm doing and my world and everything. So, I introduce him to everybody. And it's funny, I forgot who it was at San Diego that we walked right past and I was like, babe, did you not know who that was? Oh, it was oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. Somebody from Agents of Shield. It was basically that. And I was like, do you know who that was? Oh, okay, that's cool. But it's kind of cool though too, because then if he's oblivious to to some of the people we're around, I don't have to worry about him acting like a fan. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, he definitely has people that he's fans of and stuff like that, but which he would more likely recognize from shows like he's a big Trekkie.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sure. I'm sure if he saw somebody from TNG, he'd be like, "Wait a second, wait a second," you know?
Yeah. It is bizarre stuff. Speaking of celebrities that I love, yeah, and your panel, you had Emmett Yanamura on that panel too.
I love
And
Emmett.
oh my God, absolutely adore that human being. Was on my podcast a while back because I mean,
Yeah,
if you're an X-Men 97 fan and you were the one who directed episode 5, like we need therapy. Like you
the
need,
Emmy nominated,
yes, I mean, and rightfully so.
rightfully
Absolutely.
so.
Hmm.
God, I just remember watching that episode when it was out and just being like gobsmacked. Even my
Hmm.
roommate that I was living with at the time, he's nerdy and he loves it. So we were watching it and we were like, "What the fuck is happening? What is going on?" And I had a feeling, like as soon as they got to Genosha, I was like, "Oh shit!" You know, if you know, things don't really go well with Genosha. I just did not expect it to happen in the same episode it was introduced in. That gobsmacked me. I was floored. It was so good.
Yeah, and it was I that whole episode, like from before it started, there were rain clouds because I had through certain channels had been told the spoiler that before the season even started that Gambit didn't survive through episode 5.
Oh,
So
really?
so when episode 5 was coming, I'm I couldn't say 100% sure, but I had a good feeling that Remy was going to bite it in that one. And then when they showed up at Genosha, I was just like, "Oh no.
Oh
Oh
no.
no." And
Oh no.
and still I can't hear like um Happy Nation by Ace of Base without like getting emotional. You know what I mean? Because you're just like, "Oh
I
no."
thought that was such a deep cut of a song choice for them. I was like, this is kind of because it's supposed to be what it is supposed to be 1997. So I go, actually, the song choice is pretty spot on, not just for what what it talks about, but that it's Ace of Base altogether. That's 1997. I go, oh, this is kind of on par, and it was so good. And we got like our first shot of Cable in that episode too. It was just so good. And Nightcrawler came back. There was a lot going on in that episode. There was a
Yeah,
ton of cameos. There was a lot going on in that episode, and it was amazing.
it was packed. And I mean, even trying to like, because we used to like when X-Men 97 was airing new episodes every Saturday night, we'd do a live stream, a crew of us like breaking down the episode. And that one, there was so much to unpack. I mean, little things all the way up to big things. I mean, in the first season, it had Emma Frost's best line, where like Trish Tilby walks up and says, "We need to talk," and Emma's like, "Is it about your dress?" Because
Yeah, listen. I was all, oh, you shady bitch. I love it though. I love it though. I remember when Chris Riley and Kevin they do like their watch parties at the Scum and Villainy bar in LA. And they kind of started with X-Men 97. And I think I can probably talk about this, I think. Um, when it got to episode 5, some of like the people that they wanted to have, some of the voice actors, they were all kind of like very wary about going to see it in person. And they were like, what's going on? They were like, we just don't know if we want to watch this in front of everybody because we might get emotional. And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I guess they ended up having, I can't remember who ended up showing up for that from the cast, but they did end up having a cast only viewing party afterwards at Kevin's house with a bunch of the cast members. And I go, "That's cool." Like if I was on the show, I probably would not want to watch this in front of everybody either, as you see me a blubbering mess. I'm like, it's so beautiful. It's so tragic.
Yeah, I feel that I'm like, and I was, it would what premiere like from our standpoint, like here in the Midwest. I want to say it would pop up at on Disney Plus at like 1 in the morning or something
Oh
like that.
yeah.
So of course I wouldn't stay up, but I would get up in the morning and watch it. I'd set an alarm to get up at like 6 a.m. My wife and I could watch it like, before we had to get started for the day. And I'm not here to name drop, but I remember like later that afternoon, like one of the voice actors texted me and said, "Hey, you doing okay?" And I'm like,
Aw.
"No, no, I'm not doing okay. You son of a bitch, you could have fucking warned me. Like,
You could have
come
given me
on."
something to let me
Right.
know. You
Yeah, take
know, a little bit like a little bit of brace yourself goes a long way. That's all you
yeah.
had to say. You didn't have to
Uh-huh.
give anything away. You could just be like, be prepared for this one. Just let me
Right.
let you know.
Yes. And that was the hard part because my wife did not want any spoilers. So me
Oh
knowing, and
yeah.
she hasn't read a lot of it, so she doesn't know about Genosha. Didn't know that Gambit was probably going to die in that episode. The whole time I'm sitting next to
Oh.
her, just like clenching, like, no, 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 no. Yeah, that one was rough. So yeah, when I had Emmett on the podcast, I had to be like, okay, you need to therapy us. You're like, you need to you need
Yeah,
to talk us through this.
absolutely.
Because oh my God, I mean, can you imagine like being a director and like getting handed that script and being like, this is your episode? I mean, like,
I'm
oh
like,
my God.
I'm gonna direct my ass off for this episode. Let me
Yeah.
tell you. It has to be right. The whole thing has
Yes.
to be right.
Yes. And they absolutely did direct their ass off for that one. Because, yeah, as a matter of fact, I just had it on the other day, was just kind of doing a casual rewatch in the background while I was con crunching. And I
Oh,
was like, oh my
just
God.
casual rewatching
Yeah.
X-Men 97 with all the
Right.
trauma.
Right. But that, speaking of trauma, I don't know if that's a good place to jump off. Because obviously you've been Uncanny Experience. What's your level of X-Men fandom and kind of like where'd that begin for you?
Oh God, where did that begin? Um, I remember as a kid being in like where you could buy comics. I can't remember the place we would go. It wasn't necessarily a comic book shop. Um, because I think it had like ice cream and stuff like that, and they just happened to sell comics and Pogs, and I'm dating myself, Pogs.
Pogs, yes.
Listen. And I remember seeing an X-Men comic, you know, any other nerd will tell you exactly what issue it was. I'm just blanking on it, but I remember looking at it as a kid thinking, "Oh, that's probably not for me. That looks like it's like for adults." And when X-Men the animated series came out, I totally got absorbed into it, and my mom's she wasn't her wife at the time, but my mom's ex-wife, uh she was a big X-Men fan, and she ended up getting, I think she still has them actually. The last time we helped her move, I found them. The Pizza Hut X-Men animated series VHS tapes that came with a comic book, like a small comic book in the back. They're still sealed. I have no idea what they're worth,
Oh,
but at the end of the day, it's not about what money you get for it. It's about what it's worth to you.
right.
And that was kind of where I really got into X-Men and realized, oh, this isn't for just adults. Kids can read this too. So I would try to get some X-Men comics whenever I could find them at the grocery store. I'm a big DC person. Robin is my ride or die. Tim Drake is my boy.
All right.
And so that was like the issue I would always go to get at the grocery store, was like the next Robin issue. And then I'd look around and be like, okay, is X-Men here too? A lot of times the X-Men was sold out. I mean, not surprising, but it's a grocery store. They probably only get 10 issues of 10 copies of an issue in, back when you could buy comic books in grocery stores. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
God. I think the only thing you can buy in grocery stores now are still like the Archie Comics double digest and stuff at like the counter. And
Yeah.
I still be getting those sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that next to the $9 eggs. Yeah, the that was the yeah, because I remember that, and I like screwed my like future fortunes so bad because living in a small town, I remember I used to like mow lawns for money, and then would ride my bike up to the grocery store. They'd have the comic book spinners, and
Yeah.
I'd get a couple comics, and then I would sit outside the grocery store and read them, and then I'd fold them in half and shove them in my back pocket of my jeans and ride my bike home. And now
Oh,
looking
I
back, I'm
can't
like, how
I
many
can't tell you
issues?
how many issues I found of old comic books from the 90s that like I tore the covers off of.
Oh
Or
yes.
or they also just kind of fell off, like it wasn't always me tearing them off, but
Right. Yeah. I tend to wonder how many like really expensive comics or important issues that I absolutely like obliterated that way because yeah. Or you'd like, you treated them like toys back then. You threw them you left them on the floor and yeah,
exactly.
you'd set, cans of pop on top of them and they'd leave the rings and oh gosh, my brother-in-law did that, who's older than me. When him and my sister got married, he's like, "Hey, I hear you're into comic books," and he handed me like a shoebox with like comics. And some of these were like Superman comics from like the 40s,
Oh my
and they were just
God.
like so many of them were missing back covers. And I decided to just take him in a local comic book shop just to see what he thought, and the guy about cried. He's like, if these were even remotely like fives out of tens, they'd be worth thousands of dollars. But
Isn't
they're
that
just like,
crazy?
I know it is absolutely insane.
It is crazy. I don't even know if I probably have a couple of issues that are like not even older ones, just some that are again, I don't put value on things that I intend on keeping. It is nice to know sometimes that someone would pay $10,000 for a comic book that I have, but
Right.
I'm not. But then if I sell it, yeah, I got the $10,000 to pay bills and stuff, but then I don't have that comic book from my childhood anymore. So it's like a
Yeah.
double-edged sword. So I don't really it might have a value to somebody, but like to me it would be priceless. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, I've even gotten help from some collectors because there are times where it's like I've gotten comics signed, I've gotten them autographed, and I've had them autographed like to James or like to Finch. And people are like, "Oh God, if you sign it, get it signed in CGC." I'm like, it means more to me in my collection or framed on my wall than it does as item number 1597 on eBay. Like that's just.
Exactly. There is one comic book that I got signed that I had like buyer's regret about. That
Oh,
I because at the time I just didn't have money, and I want to say this was at WonderCon, and Steve Cardenas was there with Boom back when Boom Studios had a booth there, and there was it was one of the Montez variants where it was like the Zords, and you could see like the little silhouette of like the Ranger on it. And I got the Red Ranger one, and he signed it, and he asked me my name, and I was also distracted, so I wasn't paying attention. And he signed it with my name on it. And then as soon as I walked away, it was cool that I got to have that little moment with him. But at the time when I was broke, I had big buyer's regret. I was like, why did I just spend that money? It was only like 40, $50, but still at the time when you're broke,
yeah.
that's a lot of
Uh-huh.
money. So I was
Yeah.
like, why did I just spend that money? That was an impulse buy. I could have just gone over to talk to him, but I bought it. And then I realized, well, I'm stuck with it now because he put my name on it.
Yeah, I think probably more than anything, the people who will be most upset about that is my kids when I pass away. So I'll be like, man, we could offload all of these, especially like hopefully like many years in the future. Like be like,
Yeah.
man, this comic from 60 years ago and it's autographed by Chris Claremont and CG Seed and except for the fact that it says to James on it. So
Well, at least you have a more common name where to find a buyer whose name is James might is going to be way more feasible for them
right,
versus
yeah.
trying to find somebody named Julian. Like
Right, yeah.
that's going to like Power Rangers. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Just to get him to start signing it to my bud or like to my friend.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. How was speaking of that, because I was like the very first comic book that I ever read. I'm not gonna go into a long story because people have heard this on the podcast. I saved it from when I was 9 years old. Like I still had it. Semi good condition too. And it was really, really cool to me to bring it to uncanny experience and get it autographed by Chris Claremont because
That's awesome.
that felt like a full circle kind of thing, like the 9-year-old kid to the 45-year-old man. Still got this comic. All the comics my mom told me repeatedly to throw away, you know.
You know, I
And
have a comic book that I bought at my aunt and my uncle used to take me antique shopping when I was a kid. Like our whole house was like Victorian style. Like not the house itself, just the furnishings. The house was modern, but the decor was all very Victorian. So they'd always want to go to antique shops to see what treasures they could find. And I bought it was a collected version of A Lonely Place of Dying, which introduces Tim Drake into DC's continuity.
okay.
I believe it was, I want to say Denny O'Neil did it. And I have read that book. I don't, which is it's 5 issues collected to make the story. I have read that thing so many times, but there was a time, I think I was like 9, and I think something happened where my mom got upset. I don't want to get into it, but like she got upset about something. And it was kind of like my mom always had this like thing when she would get mad. She had this idea of like materialism, like you care more about this than you do this. And she would it sounds horrible to say. But my mom's not a bad mom. Let me just say that too before I say all this. It was just like, there's underlying issues and stuff, and she would like destroy things that I had. And she ripped maybe 5 pages, not fully out of the book, but like the bottom of like a coffee mug, like size, like half of that. And I still have that book. I will not. It is not in pristine condition. It has been put in a book bag, carried around on a bicycle, like you said. Like it has seen some wear and tear, but to me, it's priceless. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes. Yeah, that's funny you say that. I sometimes from what you're saying, I wonder if we grew up in the same house because that was our whole aesthetic in my home growing up. Everything was Victorian rugs and coffee tables and picture frames and yeah, well, a lot of that is generational. Like I believe our parents were like at that generation where everything was about elevating your social status. Like
Yeah.
that was everything. And not to say they were fake. It was just it was the way they were raised. And to them, like our parents, like there were comic books when they were kids, but they were kids' toys.
Yeah.
So it was like from my mother's perspective, it was very much you've outgrown these things. Why do you still have boxes of them? Why are you 15 and still going to the comic book store? Why are you 25 and still going to the comic? Why are you 45 and why haven't you sold those comics yet?
Right.
And I'm kind of like, come to a Comic Con and see like the thousands of people my age and younger all hanging out and doing this. This isn't like a children's fad thing like Pogs or something, you know?
Not the pogs.
I love the Pogs.
Yeah, my aunt and my uncle, I will say, like, because they helped raise me, they really helped raise me. They were always very on board with me just like collecting things or getting comics and stuff like that. My uncle was the one. I've told this story on other podcasts before, but I'll tell it again because I love this story. Um, my uncle is part of the generation that had the Adam West Batman, and I grew up watching it because of him. So when people are like, "You are not old enough," and I'm all, "No," but my uncle was, and he raised me right. Let me just say. And there was a year where on FX they did it was 4th of July, I think, and they did like an Adam West show marathon the whole day, and then at the end they aired the movie. And my uncle got up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, put in the VHS tape to record it, and I had 2 VHS tapes of episodes and then a separate one for the movie. I can't tell you how many times I watched those things. It is my bread and butter. I love it. So he was always very cool with like me wanting to get geeky stuff because he was kind of geeky himself. So he was always like very on board with like nurturing that side of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's my oldest God, who's now just recently turned 22. That's shocking.
Oh my God.
Right. Yeah, when he was in that like 12, 13, 14, 15 era when like the Christopher Nolan Batman movies were coming out. A
Oh,
humongous Batman fan. Everything had to be Batman. And then he was hanging out with my dad one day and my dad decided to put on the Adam West Batman movie, and he was just like, "What the fuck?" Like Batman has shark repellent, you know? He's
God,
like,
I just there's something to be said about the camp. What's funny is I actually the shirt that I put on wearing a shirt that says Daily Planet Press Reporter,
"Oh,
but
nice."
I almost wore it. I just got this for Christmas from my aunt and my uncle. It's a green t-shirt with the old school Batman logo from the Adam West show on it. So it looks like the screen when it was like the logo with the green background. So it looks like that.
Oh,
They
okay.
just gave that to me for this last Christmas. And I'm 37 now. They could have given to me this to me when I was 8 and I would love it just as much. I am obsessed.
Yeah, I'm the same way. You know, we it's us nerds, us older nerds, aged very well. You
Yes.
know, and that's what I think is fantastic. I mean, as you can see the wall behind me, like it's not like, you know, I've had X-Men posters on my wall since I was a kid. Guess what? You know, um, yeah, that I love that vintage stuff. Any of that stuff you can find. I didn't even know. Did you ever? I don't know if you're a huge. Did you ever see that Generation X like pilot that they did?
Yes, with Finola Hughes.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God. I don't know why I had like a blind spot in my life because I didn't even know that was a thing. And then
Really?
like a year or so ago, I was doing a podcast with Michelle Waffle Otero, and she brought it up, and I thought she was 100% gaslighting me on the air. I was like, shut the fuck up.
That
Like
is so funny.
they did not make it like shut up. She's like, no, seriously, it's on YouTube. Go look it up. And I like literally like turned to my TV and like went YouTube and I'm like, oh my God, what is this?
Even more wild, Chandler has a hard copy of it on VHS.
Does he really?
Yes, because at the Uncanny Experience, because I went in to go help them this last year, I was there when they were doing setup, and I didn't see what tape it was that went in. They were trying to get the TV to work. If I remember correctly, it's one of those TVs that has a built-in VHS player.
Oh my
VHS
God.
player? What am I saying?
Right?
A VCR. Oh my God, a VHS player, like it's a DVD or Blu-ray. No, it's a VCR. It's got its own name. Um, and as soon as it started, like it didn't even have anything crazy on it. I was like, is this Generation X? And Chris Riley goes, "It is. How did you know?" I go, "Because when you know, you know."
Right.
I actually, Chandler and Chris came and visited me a couple weeks ago in Riverside. They were like, "We want to see your new place and everything." And there's an antique store right down the street from me. It's like 4 levels of stuff, and we were like on the bottom level, and one of the booths had a bunch of VHS tapes. And Chandler found an X-Men animated series VHS and it was part of the Phoenix saga. And he had it in his hand, and then later on, maybe like 10 minutes later, it wasn't there. He didn't have it in his hand. I go, bro, what are you not gonna get the tape? And he goes, "Oh, I pulled it out of the box and it was like damaged." And I go, "What's damaged about it? Show me, show me." So I had him walk me over to it and he goes, "Watch, pull it out." I pulled it out. Thank God for the internet and TikTok because I had already seen this been done before. I go, "Oh, it's missing that flap at the top." I go, "Well, there's a ton of other VHS tapes here." I fully pulled another one and popped it off and popped it back on. And then he bought it because he goes, "I could not justify getting something that was going to be like another paperweight." And I go, "Oh, boo boo, this is fixable." I don't know the condition of the tape that's been exposed, but if it's been in the box, it should be fine-ish. And and then part of the bottom of it was like you could see it was the plastic was separating. And I go, "I'm not sure how to fix that." And he goes, "It's probably just the screw on the back that needs to be tightened." I go, "Oh yeah." And he goes, but he watched me like pop this thing off, pop it on this one. He goes, "Oh my God." I go, "Hey, it's not like I went to another booth that had tapes and took something out of theirs. This is from the same person selling them. They had a damaged item. Now they're making a sale. They still have a damaged item, but they made a sale now." And he
Yes.
totally got it. And when we were sitting there, we were just going over like the movies that were there, and I was down on the ground, and I didn't. see this one?" And he goes, "Yeah, look, there's Chasing Amy." And I went, "There's what? There's what? There's what?" Now, when I say, the thing now is like people say like, "Oh, my lore started here," or "This is part of my lore." Chasing Amy is 1000% part of my lore. I saw that movie way too young, and and a lot of it, I will say, a lot of it at that age went over my head, and it took like years later of watching it, went, okay, now I fully get the whole thing, right? But it's wild because I loved that movie, and it wasn't because that they work in the comic book industry and they make Blunt Man and Chronic. It wasn't anything like that. I just really liked the story,
Mhm.
and it didn't dawn on me until years later, as I was like, oh, I'm gonna put on this, comfort film, and it starts off in a comic convention and goes into a panel, and it shows them hanging out afterwards, going to the bar, and I go, okay, okay, when did this movie become my life? Because this
Yes.
is literally what I'm doing now.
Yes. That is Kevin Smith. I mean
Yes.
that Kevin Smith era. I think I want to say I was like either 18 or 19 when Chasing Amy came out.
God, I love
Um,
that movie.
for me, it was Clerks. Like I remember, like Clerks being this movie that there weren't commercials for it. Like where I lived, it definitely wasn't in theaters.
Yeah.
It was a VHS tape that was being passed around high school. Like, hey, take this home and check this out. And to
Yeah.
you, millennials and Gen Zers listening, yes, there was a period in time where our media had plastic flippy things and screws.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The copy of Chasing Amy that I bought, I pulled it out to see if that one was like damaged too because of what he just went through. And I made a total joke because you can see the tape in the front of it, and you could see that it was like played through. And I made a joke like, what did I say? Oh, I was like, oh, whoever watched this last did not rewind. That's not very kind.
That's not kind. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
that movie really, God, when that movie come out? 1997.
Oh,
So
okay.
I
So
was
it's
so I was 10 when that movie came out. I saw
oh,
that movie
okay.
way too young,
Yeah, I
but
was
I loved it. And also, let me just say, so for a lot of people end up, I feel like don't know this, even though I'm very open about it, is that I'm not, people always assume that I'm like white and maybe Latin mixed, but I'm actually like, my dad is like black and Puerto Rican, and I'm like, no, I'm actually very mixed. So I would always love to see black characters. I read some of those Icon and Rocket comics, maybe a little too young too, but I loved them. And my mom was always on board with that too. Like when Static Shock came out as a cartoon, she would always try to be like, "What are you watching?" And then she saw that it was like a black superhero kid show, and she goes, "Oh, I'm totally into this for you. Like, yes, you should have this." But
uh-huh.
Hooper X, the gay black man in Chasing Amy, iconic. Like totally was something like even before I really fully knew that I was gay, there was just something so fabulous about him that I thought he was so great. And I'm like, wow, like because of also the 90s being, the stigma of just gayness in general.
Right.
It was just one of those things that when I watched it, I was like, this guy is awesome.
Yeah.
To me, to this
Yeah.
day, that opening sequence of him on the panel is just iconic. What's a Nubian? Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I was literally just I was as a straight white man driving in my car with my wife, I was like rehearsing that entire scene in the car just like a week ago.
I
Where
love
it's like
it.
his comic book White Hate and Coon.
Ain't got none of that bullshit.
Yeah, then Jedi is the most insulting insult where he takes off his mask and shows a crusty old white man. They
He's
trying to say deep
sullied.
down inside we all wants to be white. Well, isn't that true? Black
Black
Rage.
Rage. Oh, I to this
Oh
day,
God.
I love it so much. And the funny thing is, I guess it's not too funny. I guess it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that like what he's talking about in 1997 is still very relevant in
Yeah.
2025. Like it's
Yeah.
cool, but also like it's kind of sad that we still have to like fight for that representation. Like what does he
Mhm.
say? He goes, "Now my book, Wyatt Hayton Coon, ain't got none of that bullshit. The character's name is Maliqua, and he's descended from a tribe in Africa that was like the cornerstone of civilization when you European motherfuckers were hiding in caves all scared of the sun and shit." And
Right.
It's iconic.
It's so good. Absolutely. Yeah. That was to me that was an interesting movie. I had this thing where like I grew up um in a very, very small like Midwest farm town.
No.
Yeah, no.
I'm
Oh, do I
kidding.
just give off that vibe?
No.
You cornbread motherfucker.
That's comedy.
And it was interesting because it was like I was fortunate enough to have exposure to LGBTQ as a young man because I had family members who like through the 80s were like openly gay, openly lesbian. And so like when you absorb that as a young child and your brain hasn't yet been like corrupted by politics or any kind of social norms, you're just like, okay, so
Yeah.
she's a girl who likes girls. That's fucking cool. Cool. I don't care,
Yeah.
but that movie, like in that regard, was really like to me was really formative at a time because that was the first time I was ever like really massively exposed to LGBTQ and really like oh, there's like a culture here. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was a gigantic Freddie Mercury fan as a kid, and still am to this day. But that was different than like a movie where it's like you're talking about a woman like Amy in this movie who's bisexual, who clearly has like gone through like a long path of like sexual exploration and even at
Yeah.
times being exploited and kind of that like journey. That was like I remember that being like a massive I don't want to say wake up call because I knew it existed, but that was the first time you ever like really get like immersed into it to the point where like you begin to understand it. You know what I mean?
It's so funny because like I feel like that movie gets slept on a little bit. Like the ones that know, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And kudos to Kevin Smith for telling the story. I know some people might find parts of it problematic, but at the end of the day, that movie exposed a lot of people to some parts of queer culture that they would not have normally seen anywhere else.
Mhm.
Like there's that whole scene where they're sitting in the park and she's basically having to spell it out for Ben Affleck's character. What does she say? She says something about oh, because she says like, oh, she's like, we had sex afterwards. He goes, yeah, but not real sex. And she
Right.
goes,
Yeah.
and she's like, I'm moved to have that that stricken from the record as like it like makes you seem like not with it, dude.
Right.
And he's like, well, where's the penetration in lesbian sex? And then she does the whole like thing with her hand in her
Yeah.
hand.
Whoop.
And he's like, what? And she
Shut
goes,
up.
yeah. She's like, our bodies are made to pass a child, for God's sake. Like, come on now. And then she says, like, sometimes tongue only. He goes, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, how much tongue can really like how much could it do? And then she sticks out her tongue and he's like, oh my God. I just thought it was so funny because it in a way it was a little informative because that was a conversation that men were having in the 90s. They didn't know
Yeah.
like what any they didn't know anything about lesbian sex other than like, oh, they must, scissor or something.
Right. Yeah.
That they didn't know. So it was I kind of like the idea that he showed what a real world conversation of the time was happening.
Right.
And that's exactly the conversation that a
Yeah.
straight guy would have with a lesbian in 1997
Yeah.
because that wasn't out there. There was not a lot of media out there.
Hmm.
I don't remember when Will and Grace started, but I remember for the longest time, Will and Grace was like the only queer representation on television. And then we ended up getting shows like Queer as Folk, which was like, here's Will and Grace and here's Queer as Folk, like way different ends of the spectrum. And
Right.
it became a thing where like, then we started seeing characters trickle down. And it always seems to be very the Jack characters. Like if somebody's
Mm.
gay, it's very like, hey, like what's considered quote unquote family friendly.
Yeah, like theater boy sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Groundbreaking. The gay was in theater. Stop. Tell me
Right.
something new.
You're absolutely right. And I want to say, like, to people, like, I can understand people having criticism of certain parts of Chasing Amy. As the straight guy, I have to say, like, at that time, I was 100% Ben Affleck on that swing. Like,
Yeah.
how the fuck would I know? I have no idea. And I 100% would have taken that argument. Like, you're not really having sex. I mean, you're having fun, and I'm sure you're enjoying yourself. So, yeah, I was the 100% person who watched that movie and went, oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. All right, because otherwise, like Google wasn't Google then. You know?
No, it was not. I mean,
Yeah.
God, we didn't even have Yahoo. God, we barely had the internet, honestly.
Right.
Let's be real. 1997,
AOL dial-up.
AOL, more like CompuServe.
Right.
These kids will not know what CompuServe is. It is so funny. I'm like, it was like the originator.
Yeah,
AOL was
yeah.
for rich people at one time, and then
Right.
you would go to like Walmart, and they'd have like a bin full of the AOL. You would have to get the remember you'd have to get the discs
Yeah, it was in a box.
to upload to your computer just to log on to the internet to dial up to have an account, and it'd be like here's like 100 free hours. But then if you were smart about it and you got multiple of them, you could get like five, and you'd have 500 free hours with different email accounts.
Guys, your internet time was logged by hours. It was like minutes on a cell phone
One,
back
oh my
then.
God, the kids don't know what that is.
I know.
What do you
I know.
remember when? Oh my God. Remember when you would have to pay for your minutes. But not only
Yes.
that, when like a text message would cost you 10 cents, and then
Yes.
they came out with penny texting. I was like, "Oh, thank God." And then they had
Right.
what was it? Free nights and weekends after 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
All of a sudden at like
Kids.
7:01, you'd start getting text messages from a bunch of friends because
Oh
they're
yeah,
like,
your phone would be blowing up at 7 o'clock because everybody has the free minutes now all of a sudden. You'd have like 20 missed calls because people are
yeah.
trying to call you.
God, that was such archaic times. Yeah, that's what I love about being my age is I get to regale people with like the stone age of the internet and like
I know,
when it began.
I feel like we're like in this like how do I say this? It's wild to be, I guess, in like the middle section where Gen X was very like, go out, play, and you would not come home for like hours until like the sun was starting to set. Drinking from garden hoses and things. I was part of like that was like part of my childhood. And then like the internet came around and it was a lot of learning of that. And kids nowadays just don't. Somebody posted a TikTok the other day and she's like, these kids don't know what to do with themselves. And it was like, I think a mom said, like, go outside and play. And these kids were kind of just standing there walking around, like looking at bushes, like they didn't know what to do. They
Yeah,
didn't know what to do with themselves. And I was like, that's a problem.
right.
That is a problem. I'm sure that's not obviously it's not everybody, but the fact that that happened made me laugh. And I go, wow, they really have no idea.
Uh-huh.
Go to the park, play
Yeah.
Red Rover, like something, get something.
Yeah,
Like God,
Ghost
I
in the Graveyard. Yeah, I don't know if you ever played that. Yeah, it was the same way. I give my kids shit all the time because I'm like, yes, Gen Xers, you basically found us in the woods. Like we were in the woods.
Listen,
Yeah.
we there was stuff that I did as a kid that I look back on and go, "Oh my God, I could have died."
Yeah.
There was because I grew up in the desert. I lived in a mobile home park at one point with my mom, and the property behind us was not developed. It's fully like developed now. Like there's apartments and stuff, like an apartment complex and everything. But before that, back in the 90s, we would walk. Me and my friends, like in the park, we would walk to the back, and it was all just like desert. And I shit you not, like I think about this and go, oh my God. What? Our parents didn't know where we were at, nothing. We walked through the desert and came across what I thought was like not the dump, but there was like piles of like not I mean garbage, but not like garbage, just like stuff like there was like a futon and things like that. Looking back, now knowing what I know now, thinking that that was like a garbage drop off. It was in the middle of the desert. There was no garbage drop off. Girl, that was like a meth den. And nobody was there, thankfully. Thankfully, nobody was there. But imagine like the crazy crackheads we could have come across, like a group of like six kids, and people are over there in the middle of the desert trying to get their high on, and they could have killed us. Like it's crazy to think. Like, and my
Yes.
mom would have had no idea where I was.
Yes. That was
It's crazy.
did you watch Stranger Things?
Yes,
Yeah, I tell my kids like because they were into that show. I'm like, yeah, like daddy's that age. Like in that time I was the age of those kids.
that
So
part.
so yeah, there would be like a Tuesday in July where, and typically what it was is I'd get on my bike and I'd leave my house somewhere around 8, 9 in the morning. and I'd come back at like 7, 8 at night when the street lights came on. There's no cell phones, there's no pagers, there's no air
Oh my God,
tags. Yes, you
pagers.
remember that era? Beep beep
Pagers.
beep 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 beep. Ah, son of a
Oh my
um.
God. I remember
You
my
know,
first pager.
yeah, the kids, they're like, well, what did you do? Like, you didn't have a cell phone, you didn't have the internet. I'm like, well,
You went out in
um,
the world and played.
yeah, we'd spend a couple hours throwing rocks at a dead deer in the woods.
Yeah.
We'd put pennies on the railroad tracks, so when the train came by, it would split them. We did all the shit kids should not be doing, and that is in any way, shape, or form safe. But then again, that's why we grew up self-reliant, and
It is, yeah, and it's crazy too. Like, God, even just going to the park, even if it was like a controlled area, you would be at the park no less than 3 hours
mhm.
playing let's play X-Men and Power Rangers or whatever.
Ninja
It,
Turtles.
Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
listen. It's I just and it's funny because that park that I'm thinking of, I know where it's at and I've come across it a couple times and it's been completely redone. It is not anywhere near as glorious as it used to be. But also that playground was not safe. Like it had like a second level of a slide that you would have to come down like the spiral slide. But there was like a steel metal support beam that kids would try to like not try, they would do this. They instead of going down the slide, they'd climb over the slide and slide down the pole. If you fell, girl. And it was
Yeah.
like rocks at the bottom, like those pebbly
Yeah.
rocks. Now
Yeah.
it's like been re-updated to like foam grounding, which okay, okay.
Yeah.
If a kid falls, I guess they won't hurt themselves as bad.
Yeah.
But that's what
Yeah.
builds character.
We
I don't.
we yeah, in our time we played the numbers game. Like we might have to sacrifice 2% of our kids, but the other 98% come out stronger. Repressing a
Oh,
lot of mental health, but
this
stronger.
is this is also true. You know what's wild? Not to get dark, but in the 90s it was very like, don't talk to strangers.
Hmm.
Do not talk to strangers. There was God, there was if you look it up, it was a big deal. There was this kid Anthony Martinez who was the same age as me. I think this was actually 1997 as well. Who was abducted like from his front yard and they ended up finding his body like in Indio like a couple weeks later and the guy like got away with it for like years but then they found him he was already because he had already been processed for other stuff. There's a
Mm.
whole thing about it, but I remember being at the park one time and there was this guy and this was like ooh, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. There was a guy at the park and he was flying like one of those like bigger like A-line kites, right? And it was me and there was a bunch of kids. There was a bunch of kids, which you would think would be safe. However, when there's a bunch of chaos going on, it's easier to get away with things. And he was very adamant. He was very adamant about me. Like he's like, "Why don't you try the kite? Why don't you try the kite? Do you want to hold it? Do you want to hold it?" And I did. And as soon as I got like the handle to hold the kite, he like circled his body around me to hold onto it and it was stranger danger. It was
Yeah.
stranger danger. The red lights were going off in my brain. And I was like, okay, well, this was cool. Like, I literally held on to it for like 4 or 5 seconds. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm done. And I was like, I got to go get my friends. And I ran off. And I just think about stuff like that. And I go, what if that guy was trying to abduct me or somebody?
Yeah.
We don't. What my auntie said something to me recently. She said it's something along the lines of the world used to be a safer place and I was on the phone with her so I can't say like I looked at her but I paused and I went I don't know what you're talking about the world was a safer place dude because in not so many words I guess the world feels somewhat safer because we have cameras everywhere people have ring
Yeah.
doorbells and stuff. I'm like look at how many serial killers came out from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s because there was nothing, you could get away with stuff.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
all, but you say the world was a safer place. I'm all, look how many more serial killers were caught. And not to say that there aren't any now, but look how
Hmm.
much there were. John Wayne Gacy, like, oh my God.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey
Yeah.
Dahmer.
Well, yeah. And if you look at the statistics, kidnappings are way down from the 80s,
Oh
like
yeah.
massively down because you don't get away with it because between kids with cell phones that have geo trackers and air tags, like both of my kids have, they have air tags in their backpacks,
Smart. It's
all
smart.
that kind of stuff, and yet it still freaks me out when my kid's like 5 minutes late coming back from the bus stop. So I'm like,
Oh.
you know what I mean? Even though I know, what I did. But yeah, those that was the golden era. But we're up against the clock. We're out of time, man. We
Oh
plowed through that
man.
like it was nobody's business. Hey guys out there, go Google Pogs.
Yes. Oh my God.
Well, everybody, there we are. Julian, can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. So fun talking to you guys. If you're out there, if you're not following Julian on all the social medias, what do we got? We got Facebook, we got Instagram, you on Blue Sky?
I am on Blue Sky. Of course, we had to jump that X
Oh,
boat.
really quick. Yeah, definitely did that too. But we're going to get out of here, folks, and we will talk to you all next time.
Thank you for having me on, Finch. This has been awesome. We just keep talking.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you all later.